good evening, and welcome. Tonight I'm going to be teaching you the history and geography of Kuwait, which you can see is this very tiny country right here in my old atlas. I want to show you this map first, just so I can show you the borders of Kuwait, and then I'm going to show you my gorgeous new atlas with a much better map of Kuwait. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for watching. I do hope you subscribed because I do upload every day with really relaxing content about world geography and history. And if you aren't new to my channel, welcome back. I made a change to take out the intro music to my world geography and history videos, mostly because my editing software, starting with my Japan series, decided to randomly change the volume after I exported it. Whenever I edit with my, my high-def headphones on my PC, I always make sure that the music's nice and soft, and then after I export, it would decide to make it blaringly loud, and it did that for a few Japan videos. It did that for my Gambia videos, both of them. So I'm just tired of it, so I've just decided to not do it. Maybe I'll do sound effects every once in a while, but I'm kind of bummed because I always thought it was really cute. Of course, I just woke up my cat, so now he's eating food. I apologize. He's eating his dry food, of course, the loudest possible food. At least he's doing it at the start of the video. Anyway. But yeah, I've made that change. So, I'm a little bummed, but it is what it is. But let's talk about Kuwait. Kuwait, as you see, is here in the Middle East, and it is bordered only by two countries, Iraq and Saudi Arabia, which I do want to point out because it's incredibly important in its history. And it's also bordered by the Persian Gulf you see here. Now, some countries, including Kuwait, don't like to call it the Persian Gulf. They call it the Arabian Gulf. It's a big point of contention. It's like a politically correct kind of thing to them. Mostly due to its connotations with Iran, who they're not particularly friendly with. The Gulf is an extension of the Arabian Sea, so they call it the Arabian Gulf. And some people just call this the Gulf to try to please both sides, but that also doesn't please anyone, apparently. So most people in the world still call it the Persian Gulf because that's what it's been called since forever. Iran was called Persia during its times of antiquity, I suppose, way back in the old days. So that's just what it's always been known. For the sake of this video, mostly because all of my maps still have it labeled as the Persian Gulf, that's what I'll be referring it to. So I do apologize if you watching this video feels insensitive toward it. That's just for the sake of the labels on my maps. It does say on my atlas about the other name that it has. There's a note on it, but just for the sake of the labelings on my maps, I'm going to refer to this as the Persian Gulf. Please do not dislike this video or any of my videos just because of the topic. If you want to dislike the video, feel free to do so, but don't do it just because it's about a topic that you disagree with. Do it because of the quality of the video or whatever. Just my channel is all about relaxation, and it's also really about world peace. So I'm not here to spread negativity or my own opinions about world's goings on. So yeah, I wanted to point that out first and foremost going into this this video, and just to get that out of the way, let's get into more of the geography about Kuwait. Let me slide this aside and show you the nice pretty map in my new atlas. Here we go. Move this carefully. If also you're new here, my chair is very, very squeaky. Black Friday is coming up. I'm hoping to get into some good chair deals. Find a nice new chair. Let's see. Kuwait, right here. Can you see? Kuwait. It is still pretty small, but, it's a small little country. It's very cute. And there's that You can see the name of the country. So Kuwait is a flat country. Actually, let me show you the map that's in here because it's very big. At the end of this video, once I go through geography and history, we'll flip through this book and I'll show you some wonderful pictures, mostly of Kuwait City, and of what the people demographics look like in Kuwait. Here we go. So, much more zoomed in version. So, don't let the green fool you. Kuwait is not a green country. Green means flat in this map. Kuwait is very, very flat. It is a deserty country. There's pretty much nothing there. It's flat desert. They have no real rivers or lakes or any kind of bodies of water. No real mountains or anything like that. Just desert, to be honest. I covered up my pencil. Here it is. This section over here is where most of the oil fields are. And here you can see Kuwait City, the capital, Kuwait Bay. Failaka Island you can see right here. We're going to mention in its history very early on because this is where most of the action happened in its early history. Pretty much all that we're going to talk about in the history of Kuwait happens around here. Pretty much everything out here is just desert. It's sand, brush, Bedouin tribes. They're nomadic peoples that wander throughout all of this region of the Middle East. They float through this part of the world as well. But the other islands out here are uninhabited. Subian Island, you see out here, the largest, is very muddy, gushy. You can still go out there and visit, but it's very marshy. No one lives there. Failaka Island is the only one that people live on, as of today at least. You can't really see on here, but there's lots of other, I believe there's 9 different islands out here around Kuwait. And in terms of physical geography, that's pretty much it. You can't see on this map, or on this other map, but you can't really see on here, because this is a physical map. They have built a big old bridge connecting Kuwait City to across this bay. They've built 2 artificial islands halfway across the bridge, and they're building a new city on this other end, just so people don't have to drive all the way across this way, just to kind of cut commute times in half. And just to like help make Kuwait a little more greener. Kuwait consumes more water, more fresh water than any other country in the world. Like, it really makes you think, like more than like China or the United States, anything like that. And you know, you really have to think because, like I said, Kuwait doesn't have any kind of river or lake or anything. They get all of their water either from importing or from desalination from the bay and the Gulf here. Oh, here, look, they said Arabian, Persian Gulf here on this map. That's interesting. So they have huge desalination plants to get the salt out of the water to drink. Ooh, sorry. So they consume a lot of water. Understandably, you know, you need water to survive. The population is really interesting here in Kuwait. 70% of the population are expats or expatriates, which means people that come from other countries to do more of the the lesser work, so to say. Like, you know, janitorial jobs, you know, the lower wage jobs, so to say. And that's because the GDP is so high in this country. The standard of living is so high. People live very luxurious, like gated community kind of lives that they just don't have the people to work those kind of lower level jobs. So, they bring in people from around the world. mostly from like Southeast Asia and Africa to work those kind of jobs. And very sadly, I'm not saying it happens often, I'm just saying that it happens, that people get exploited in those kind of situations, especially when it's a situation where they're like maids or nannies, or, you know, places where they're behind closed doors where no one can see, being used, being abused. There are countries that bans people from going to Kuwait to work. I know Bangladesh is definitely banned people from going to Kuwait to work, and Vietnam and Guinea-Bissau are working on banning people from traveling to Kuwait to work, because of some horror stories that have come out from Kuwait. And there's a few other countries around the world that have stories like that, but it's very sad. But again, I'm not saying that it's a rampant problem, but it is a problem that does happen, very sadly. But yeah, 70% of the population of Kuwait are expatriates. That's just how wealthy this is. So you can imagine, you know, how much this country makes off of oil. Again, like I just did Brunei, so I put on the bling nails for the wealthy oil countries, the very bling bling countries. So let's get into the history and figure out how Kuwait got to be this way, shall we? Let me close this up so you can see this beautiful map. Isn't this gorgeous? Look at this little Kuwait. Very teeny tiny. Let's find out how it got to be that way. So starting off in its very early history, like I said, the main history mostly starts with this little island right here, Failaka Island. Dating back to about 4000, 2000 BCE. This island and the main port right here were part of the Dilmun civilization, and they mainly held control of the trade routes between Mesopotamia and the Indus River civilization. So Mesopotamia is literally right here. I think it's even, can you see on here? Mesopotamia, you can barely see the Tamia, it's labeled on here. Two of the early, very powerful civilizations in the world is right in the middle. So you could pretty much sail down here to get to the Indus River and go right up here to get to Mesopotamia. So this civilization had a good right in the middle spot for those cultures to meet and trade. So that's what that was for. But it was later conquered by the very powerful Babylonians that rose into power nearby around 600 BCE. But much later, Alexander the Great came by and conquered this land around the 4th century BCE and built up some forts and temples on this island, and he named it Icaros Island. There's still some relics of the time that he was there. There are some ruins to a temple to Artemis, and one of his forts is sort of still standing. The Kuwaiti government didn't really do a lot to try to preserve those, ancient sites, so they're kind of run down, but they are still there. And then eventually, in the early 200s CE, it became part of a Persian empire called the Sassanid Empire, which was one of the many sort of like Persian Islamic sub-empires of the region. They actually grew to be pretty large during that time, and they made the grave error of trying to conquer Constantinople, which failed, and they ran out of money, and their king died, and they eventually got absorbed into another Islamic Persian empire, and this area was just kind of forgotten and just left to just be flown around in the desert sands. There was still people that lived in this area, little tribes set up, they fished in this area, traded around. So there was still human life in this area, but it wasn't like an established area, like a real town or anything. It was just kind of a, little villages or nomads and things like that for a long, long, long time. It wasn't really until 1521 when this area was really significant, and it's only because the Portuguese came here and said, oh, we own this now, but didn't really do anything with it. They just kind of saw the value of a nice big bay in this part of the world and thought, oh, we could do something with that, and claimed it, and then really didn't do anything with it. But in 1631, the town that was founded here would later become Kuwait City, sprung up. It was founded by many different families. They all, had their own stake in the town, their own, way of controlling, I suppose. And each had their own, I don't know how to put this. It's kind of interesting what they did. It almost reminds me of like Game of Thrones, how, you had all of those different families in control, but there was always like one that was more powerful, like it kind of like the bannermen, how there would always be bannermen and then the king. It was kind of like that, how there were, multiple families that were in control, but there was always one or two that were more powerful and would kind of make the rules. So as the years went by, families would kind of split off. There was one that left to form what is now Qatar. I think one split off to form what's now Bahrain. One by one, the families kind of moved on from this area. By 1766, there was only one left, and it was the Al Sabah family, which becomes insanely important later on. Remember that name. Insanely important to the history of Kuwait. So, in 1775, the Persians seized control of the city of Basra, which you can see right here in Iraq. And the Iraqis that lived in this area fled to Kuwait for shelter and safety. They took refuge here. And this is what started a big friendship and alliance between the Iraqis and the Kuwaitis. They became best friends during this time. Once the siege and occupation ended 2 years later, the alliance truly began, and they started trading in between each other. The industry at the time in Kuwait was boat building. They were building lots and lots of boats to sail out and, like fish and trade around this area. So in Baghdad, they started requesting boats. So they started sending boats, and they were like, hey, these are really, really great boats. And then over in Syria and Aleppo, they got wind that there were some great boats from Kuwait. So they started requesting boats, and soon trade happened in Syria and Smyrna and eventually Constantinople. And soon pretty much everyone in the area knew that if you needed good boats, you go to Kuwait. Not only that, but Kuwaiti sailors were considered the best in the world. And soon word spread throughout the world that, Kuwaitis were one of the best trading partners ever. So then, of course, that wound up going over to Europe. The East India Company, through like Britain, started trading big time through Kuwait. Very simple to, sail up from India, do your trading in Kuwait throughout the rest of the world. Many different African nations started doing their trading through Kuwait. So industries in Kuwait started kicking off big time. Became a very valuable little piece of the world here. But the biggest threat at the time, they also exported a lot of horses, I should say, lots of horse breeding going on. Forgot to mention that. The biggest threat at the time for Kuwait was the Ottoman Empire, which was just, you can't see Turkey up there, but they're right up there. The Ottoman Empire was kind of knocking at their door. There's lots of value over here that they could nab. And actually, there was some assassination attempts and threats, and even some success by the Ottomans against the Al Sabah family, who at this time were pretty much the equivalent of like the royal family. They were the emirs of Kuwait, which, in like modern day, that they're pretty much like the royal family. They're the rulers, which pass on lineage almost like a royal family. So the Sabahs and the Kuwaitis in general felt very afraid of the Ottomans, so they went to the British for help. And in 1899 they signed the Anglo-Kuwaiti Agreement, which made Kuwait a British protectorate, in order to save themselves from the Ottomans. So they were having some very good times, but these good times would not last for very long. Bad times were about to happen. One other industry they had. They had boats, they had sailors, they had horses, they also had pearls. Pearls at this time, the early 1900s, were a hot commodity, one of the most popular forms of jewelry in the world. And Kuwait had about 800 pearling ships that would go out and collect pearls here. And of course, the highly valuable, very profitable jewelry industry. However, Japan developed pearl cultivation, which made pearling a lot cheaper, faster, and basically ruined the entire Kuwaiti pearling business. By the 1930s, Kuwait only had 5 pearling ships. Completely tanked their whole industry, not to mention the Great Depression. No one was buying jewelry during the Great Depression. But also in World War I, jumping back a little bit, I got a little too far ahead of myself. During World War I, I kind of mentioned during my history of, who was it? It was, Serbia, obviously. The history of Serbia. I mentioned how World War I started and how it was very much one side against the other. Kuwait agreed with the Ottoman side, so Britain wasn't happy about that since they were on their own side. So they imposed a lot of sanctions against Kuwait, which, tanked some of their industries. Right after the war, in 1919, the new country of Najd, which would later become Saudi Arabia, declared war against Kuwait because they wanted to absorb it into their new country. Obviously, Kuwait said no thank you, so they declared war. Britain represented Kuwait at the negotiation table. They weren't allowed to speak for themselves, and Britain just gave up nearly 2/3 of Kuwait to Najd / Saudi Arabia, which is why we get this really interesting border right there. They just took like a chunk. And Saudi Arabia would still raid the border and inflict trade blockades against Kuwait up until 1937, which also hurt Kuwait's industry. And what else? The Great Depression, of course, ruined trade all over the world. It was just a really, rough time. So, Kuwaitis were suffering during all of this. All that they have is trade. Like I said, they don't have any form of water. They don't have farmland. They only live off of imports and exports. Without those, they have nothing. So, they really, really relied on their trade industry to survive. So they were struggling. So by 1938, they were making some serious plans to integrate with Iraq, their best friends, which Britain was not happy about. There were even some armed, angry protests about it, which Britain put down very quickly. But everything changed very rapidly when oil was discovered. Very rapidly. Kuwait quickly changed their mind against becoming part of Iraq. Britain, of course, was like, oh, we love you guys a lot. Oh, we believe in you guys very much. And after World War II, Kuwait entered what they called their golden era. Kuwait became the largest oil exporter in the Middle East, and of course one of the largest in the world. They managed to declare their independence in June of 1961. They formed a constitution and parliament, the first country in the Middle East to do so. and they became very modernized, very Western, actually. Very Western architecture, theater, art style, dress, politics, which was very unique for this region of the world. And in particular, it was still a Muslim country, of course. They still had their emir, sheikhs, what have you. They were still very Muslim. But they didn't, dictate how women dressed. Women were allowed to dress however they wanted. And they're still Muslims, so they're still going to follow their dress, but they weren't forced to, wear traditional Muslim dress. But if they wanted to wear traditional Muslim dress, they were allowed to. If they didn't want to, they didn't have to. So that was very, revolutionary at the time in, the 1970s in the Middle East. It was considered, radical even. So it was, very, very interesting, very modernized, I suppose, for a Middle Eastern country to be, I guess, glowing up in that sense. All because of the oil, all because they had all of that money. In the 1980s, there was a war between Iraq and Iran. And I only phrase it that way because when I was rehearsing this video, I apparently cannot say, let me try it, Iraq-Iran war. If I say it any faster than that, it comes out as Iraq-Iran war. So, war between Iraq and Iran in the 1980s. And of course, Kuwait sided with Iraq. They're best friends, right? And I should say, because of this, there were a lot of terror attacks and assassination attempts in Kuwait, which threatened to really destabilize that golden era economy. It didn't completely, it did to some extent, as terror attacks do, but didn't completely. It's always frightening to have that kind of, threat hanging over you. But after the war, Iraq was very seriously in debt to Kuwait to the tune of $65 billion. And they asked Kuwait to forgive them that debt because they're best friends. They go way back, over 200 years. And Kuwait said no. At the time, Iraq's leader was Saddam Hussein, who the world would later realize would be a very vicious dictator, a very unkind person, really not caring at all about other people's lives, especially civilians. So Kuwait would learn that saying no to him would be their biggest error. They said no to Saddam Hussein forgiving his debt. And not only that, they increased the price of oil production. So, not only said, we're not going to forgive your bill, but we're also going to increase the prices of everything, so you're going to owe us even more money, which very much upset Hussein and the Iraqi people. And they started to claim that Kuwait was stealing oil from the reserves around their border, which of course Kuwait denied. They had no reason to steal oil, and they already had so much. But it all came to a head in August of 1990 when Iraq invaded Kuwait. And they not just only invaded, they annexed Kuwait and said that there is no more Kuwait. Kuwait is now part of Iraq, which really shocked the world. One, because you just can't do that in this day and age. You could probably pull that kind of stunt in Europe in the 1400s, but not in the 1990s, not in this modern era. Two, because Kuwait was so westernized, so modernized, that I think it really upset the other westernized countries around the world that, if one country can just swoop in and take a modern country like that, it's a slippery slope, So, not to mention, oil. So, of course, the United States was very upset about that. They hopped in and came to Kuwait's rescue. On February 26, 1991, the United States invasion drove out Iraq. The event was later known as the Gulf War. It started a domino effect of other events that we're not going to really get into in this video. Not because I'm being politically correct, but because we're talking about Kuwait. It's not really Kuwait's story to tell. We'll talk about it when we start talking about Iraq and Iran, what have you. But this invasion left a mark literally on Kuwait. The Iraqi soldiers left a scorched earth policy on Kuwait. They burned many, many, many oil fields, destroying them entirely, destroying the land that oil was underneath. That land is ruined forever. And there's many different oil fields down here that are uninhabitable forever because of the oil. You can still see the destruction from the air today. The black ruined ground from those fires. And a lot of that oil leaked out into the Gulf and, not only ruined the water source the Kuwaitis are dependent on, but there's lots of coral and fish out there that were killed by the oil as well. The, oil pollution was devastating. And then, of course, the human life. There are a few thousand people that died, a few hundred that went missing. The soldiers that liberated Kuwait found mass graves with hundreds of people in them. It was just, a few dark months in Kuwait's history. Some horrors happened inside of this country when the Iraqi soldiers occupied. And again, I'm not taking sides. I'm literally just stating facts. I'm not saying one side did wrong. This is literally what happened, Actually, this book, because this book is, American, it literally just says, Iraq just wanted more oil, so they invaded. It's a very questionable summary of the Gulf War. But obviously this destroyed the relationship between Kuwait and Iraq. That friendship is ruined forever, And now, friendship ended with Iraq. Now United States is my best friend. The United States used Kuwait in March 2003 when they invaded Iraq to depose Saddam Hussein. They, I wouldn't say they occupied Kuwait, but they used it as like a base to invade Iraq. Like a safe place to stay so they could invade. In 2005, Kuwait granted women the right to vote and participate in elections, which they indeed did. And in more modern news, in September 2020, the emir passed away. He was, his name was Sabah al-Sabah. He was 91 years old. His picture will be in here because obviously he was alive when this book came out. This book is very recent, but at the time of this video, he passed away 2 months ago. So 91, he lived to a ripe old age. So a new emir was appointed in September 2020, Nawaf al-Ahmad al-Jabbar al-Sabah. And a crown prince was named in October 2020. His name is Sheikh Mishal al-Sabah. So the Sabah family has been in charge of Kuwait since literally the founding of Kuwait City in the 1600s. They've been there since the beginning. They're pretty much going to be there until the end of Kuwait, whenever that will be. Which is awesome, I think. There's an opinion for you. I think it's cool when you have a ruling family that lasts for that long. As long as they're, just and kind with their people. I just think it's neat when you have like a line that you can trace back for so long that has stayed in the same region. It's really cool. Anyway, in a nutshell, that's the history of Kuwait. And you know how, the question, like, what's your earliest memory of a worldwide event? Like, technically mine is feeling the Loma Prieta earthquake, but like the earliest news event that I remember, it's like seeing on TV, is the Gulf War. And I was 5 years old. And I don't know which parent it was, but one of my parents in the evening would turn on the news, like during dinner or like when dinner was being made. And they would show like the local news. And then, there was like an order in what news they would show. And I know they would show world news and then sports back to back. Because they would show images of the Gulf War and then they would show the sports. And they would always show golf. and my little 5-year-old ears couldn't hear the difference between Gulf and Golf. So I literally thought they were talking about the same thing. So I remember just like watching the TV and trying to figure out what was going on. And I remember thinking like, okay, like literally trying to figure this out. Like, so they're playing golf in the desert and something has gone wrong in like this golf tournament and a war has started. But they're still playing golf because, they're showing sports and they're still showing shots of people playing golf. So I was like, so there's this war going on, but they're still playing the golf tournament, I suppose. So like that's my earliest like memory of a worldwide event is the Gulf War, but having no idea what it was about and thinking it was about golf, like the sport of golf. I did try to, I should have just asked a parent. I don't know why I didn't, but that was my perception of the Gulf War, was that obviously it had to be about golf because it was the Gulf War, right? Anyway, let's go through this book. Let me show you some of the pictures. Show you what Kuwait City looks like. It's absolutely beautiful. Here's some of the towers of Kuwait City. These are actually water towers. So this is a restaurant, like a rotating restaurant. But these are water towers. It's just like a decorative tower, but these are actually functional water towers. So this is what most of Kuwait looks like deserty, shrubby, flat Kuwait, which is why the geography section is so boring, because that's what it mostly looks like. Besides this, of course, oil fields. But here's Kuwait City, shining and modern and beautiful. This is the Constitution Monument in Al Shahid Park, commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Constitution's ratification. This is the Sheikh Jabbar Al Ahmad Cultural Center. Very beautiful. Look at those lovely lights. And a solar power station. So Kuwait does observe the fact that oil is not the best industry to be in this day and age, that it is not very good for our planet, and that it is something that we need to move away from. So they do have a plan to, improve their environmental footprint, so to say, by 2035 and move on to better industries. Look at this beautiful camel. A dromedary. One hump. A little map of Kuwait. And the whole debate about the Persian/Arabian Gulf. That's what that section's about. Some water towers, very colorful. Flamingo. So here's some of the ruins on Failaka Island. And it was very viciously attacked during the Iraqi invasion, because it's the only island in the bay that is inhabited. So there are people on there, so they did attack it. Today you can go there and visit. There's still a lot of destruction and ruins from the occupation that you can still see. It's really sad. Like, I always look up tourist videos. Oh, look how beautiful this city is. So gorgeous. I always look up tourist videos, and there is still a lot of ruin on that island from, oh, see, here's a picture of it. The oil fields burning. Isn't that so sad? Yeah, still lots of destruction. It's sad, but it happened. So here is some of the ancient sites from Alexander the Great on Failaka Island. This is one of his military bases. Isn't that interesting? I think it is. This is a photo from the 1930s of their early refineries. This is actually a picture of Kuwait's Highway 80, nicknamed the Highway of Death. This is actually bombing from the coalition forces from the U.S. and their allies that came in to kick the Iraqis out. So this is what happened after they came. This apparently was nicknamed the Highway of Death. Very sad casualty of war. A little kid posing with the tank, because when you're a little boy, that's what you do when you see a tank. Beautiful city skyline of Kuwait City. So this is Sabah al-Sabah. Like I said, he was very, very old when he passed. Very old man. This was in 2016. The Kuwait National Assembly right here. And this is Safa al-Hashim, the only woman elected to Kuwait's National Assembly, celebrating her victory in 2016. This is the National Assembly building in Kuwait City. This is actually apparently a military exercise taking place here. Economy. So the Kuwaiti dinar is actually one of the most valuable currencies in the world, meaning that it's you know, I don't have to elaborate on that. Oh, come on, page. There we go. Oh, just a picture of an oil field anyway. You know they have oil. So here's a picture of the construction of that bridge I was telling you about. That goes across the entire bay. Oh, there's a rooster. Anyway, we're going to keep going. I don't care about rooster. Usually I pause when rooster crows, but we're going to keep going. Because we're almost done anyway. Flamingos. He's kind of a quiet rooster anyway. Here's a desalination plant. You can see the water coming from the bay up into there. Hopefully he's quiet enough. He's a young rooster. He's pretty quiet. So here you can see this is some pictures from the oil spills out into the bay and some of the burning oil fields. Look at all the smoke in the air. It's so awful, so terrible for the environment. So sad that that happened. Some of the flowers, the arfage flower and the kestrel. Cute little falcon little guy there. So this is what Bubiyan Island mostly looks like. Very muddy and swampy. He's going off. That's a silly rooster. The Kuwaiti girl smiling. Very pretty. And then of course these books are always full of cute kids. And their national day is on February 25th. Let me know if that rooster annoys you. I'm sorry, but yeah. He's kind of popping off right now. Their Independence Day was in June, so they had their holiday in June, but it's right in the middle of the hot summer. So they changed it to February so people could go outside and celebrate on a much cooler time of the year. Now there's a log car. Man, everything's falling apart. Here is a Bedouin man. Like I said, one of the nomadic peoples of Kuwait. One of the traditional men's clothing of Kuwait. And an example of a burqa headdress that women can wear. And an example of a headscarf that women can wear. Like I said, you know, it's very liberal in terms of what women can and cannot wear in Kuwait. It's pretty free, so... But since it is a Muslim country, see, this woman's looking at these beautiful dresses. That's gorgeous. It is a Muslim country, so most women choose to wear Muslim clothes, you know. But, you know, you are allowed to wear pretty much whatever you like. Go to a fun playground. That looks awesome. Also, this is a Diwania. Let me explain what this is like. I think Rooster finished. Okay. A Diwania. So this is a really interesting concept. Oh, there goes Rooster again. He's popping off. So a Diwania. Oh, there's a weird... Okay, we're going to ignore that. A Diwania is typically men. There are female Diwanias, but it's almost always for men. So, a man can belong to multiple Diwanias, like a family Diwania, a neighborhood Diwania, a work Diwania, where you gather to eat, or like here they're playing cards and just kind of like hang out. And you just kind of discuss like the issues of the day, anything that you feel like is troubling you in your life that you feel like could be changed, like a social problem. Like say that there's like your street is full of potholes, for example. Then they're not getting fixed, they're just getting worse. So you bring it up in your Diwani, like my street is full of potholes, it's just getting worse. So your friend maybe knows someone in another Diwania who knows someone who works in like the street paving part of government. So he goes to his Diwania who knows someone who works in street paving, brings it up, and that person goes to their Diwania that's part of a person that works in like street paving, mentions, hey, my friend has a friend who says that the street's full of potholes. So then he can bring it up in like a higher up Diwania, and then change can get done. So it's a way to get the word out and up into higher ranks so that more social change can get done. It's a really interesting concept. It's a little hard to describe. Like, I hope that makes sense, but like, it's a way to bring up issues in a way that's more productive, I suppose, if that's a way to describe it. Let's see, this fantastic looking woman right there. That's a power suit if I ever saw one. Shaima Athman Al-Naji, a senior director at the Ooredoo Kuwait company, is the first female engineer to work in Kuwait's telecommunications industry. Excellent. Oof, it's gonna make me hungry. A wedding spread. That looks delicious. Let's see. School children at work, doing arts and crafts. The entrance to Kuwait University. We've got an example of like one of the upper class homes, what I call like a parasite house with the gates in front. If you've seen that movie. Gorgeous Kuwait City. A cute little mosque. Look at that dome. It's cute. Very beautiful, I should say. That's lovely. But there's a picture in here of the Grand Mosque in Kuwait City. I know it must be coming up in this chapter. Oh yeah. This is, wow, look at this dome. The chandelier, that's beautiful. This is in a hospital. This is a hospital mosque. Of course, you have prayer going on. A Quran. Oh, this is in the Grand Mosque. The Quran in the Great Mosque. And this is it. This is the Grand Mosque in Kuwait City. Isn't it beautiful? A big old shiny gold mosque. Very lovely. Language. This is all about Arabic. Arabic works and how it's taught. And how these signs are in Arabic and in English in Kuwait. And newspapers being printed. So the press is typically pretty free in Kuwait. I'm talking here, the only real censorship, because there is some government censorship, but only in like an Islamic sense, because there are a lot of religious rules about how certain aspects of Islam can be portrayed in the media. So the government does censor the media just to make sure that no one is offended in terms of religion, in case some publication puts out something, that isn't allowed in Islam. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. So that's the only way that there's any real actual censorship, but like technically, like on paper, there is government censorship. Bedouin weaving and some gorgeous jewelry. Look at these. Oh, that's beautiful. And some gorgeous calligraphy as well. I love Arabic calligraphy. It's gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. A ship. So, a lot of artifacts in the museums were destroyed during the Iraqi occupation. So this sailing ship, because you know how I told you about how Kuwait was famous for its ships, this is a replica of one of their ancient ships, because the original was burnt by the Iraqis. And this is the Liberation Tower to celebrate the freedom from Iraqi occupation. A mirwas drum used in traditional music. Leisures. This is Aqua Park. I love a good water park, so if I ever visit Kuwait, this is definitely a place I would go to. Here we are swimming at a beach and aqua park. I love a good water park. Falcon selfie, as one does. I know I would if I was holding a falcon. Shopping trip. Oh, what a beautiful picture. Fireworks light the skies for the 50th anniversary of Kuwait's constitution in 2012. Children celebrating. Oh, now that's a beautiful picture. Look at this. Oh, that's gorgeous. Crescent moon signals the start of the holy month of Ramadan. That is a gorgeous picture with all the stars and everything. Great shot, whoever took that picture. And of course, buying fireworks for Eid, the big party holiday. And oh, the food chapter. It's a problem. I don't even like dates, and those look delicious. They look very succulent. It says right there, a platter of succulent dates. And not a date fan, but those look yummy. I would eat those. A very happy looking grocer selling some fruit. Girl enjoying her milk. Oh, it's camel's milk. Oh, she's a nomadic Bedouin drinking camel's milk. I wonder what camel's milk tastes like. Oh, baklava. See, I do not like baklava. It's way too sweet. Like, I get why people would like baklava, but it's too sweet for me. And I love sweets, which just tells you how sweet it is. McDonald's. And they're making some bread. Oh, a cute kid. There's always cute kids. Smiling. Oof. Now we're talking. Oh, I would eat this in a heartbeat with allspice, nutmeg, and saffron and cinnamon. Ooh. Yes, please. That sounds delicious. And sponge cake. Yum. And there's that map I showed you. Well, the cars outside are telling me that it's time to go. They are rolling and raging. So here's the flag. And yep, I suppose that means it's time to go. So yep, there's loud cars all of a sudden. So sounds like it's time for the parade of the loud cars. So I will let them do their parade. The 3 a.m. March of the Loud Cars. So thank you so much for joining me. Wasn't this fun? I love the history of this country. It's so unique and interesting. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you learned something interesting about Kuwait. Thanks again. I hope this was relaxing and informative. And I will see you all tomorrow for another very interesting video. Thanks again for watching and have a good night. Good night.